Hi guys, my name is Bando, this is Breakfast of Bando, and welcome to the showcase for my Sons of Horus army. This is the 228th Strike Force, known as the Terminators Retrievers. The Terminators Retrievers are a smaller force in the 16th Legion, and they specialise in asset acquisition, prisoner rescue, assassinations, and generally retrieving anything that the War Master requires. Sometimes he needs a piece of technology capturing, a specific person needs to be brought to him to answer questions, and this force likes to specialise in rapidly acquiring these things with no questions asked. The force has taken about 5 years to build, and I wanted to represent a under-equipped force, a force that isn't particularly high up in the pecking order. The commander is not very popular among the Legion. He's sometimes seen as one of Horus's pets. People like Ezekiel Abaddon have little to no time for this sort of part of the Legion. So a lot of the stuff here is Mars pattern because it's lower quality. A lot of the equipment they have is more archaic. The land speeders, for example, they have are armoured Proteus types rather than getting their hands on full Javelin class. They have Mark II land raiders over getting the better Phobos pattern land raiders. And they get things like older Mars pattern bikes as well. The force is made up particularly of 2 tactical squads in Rhinos, a large command staff, as you know I like my HQ units, a command Rhino which you can see on the right, some attack bikes, land raiders with Terminators, deep striking Terminators, several Dreadnoughts, I believe it's a Shadow Sword, but I'm probably wrong, a Spartan, and then lots of things like small support squads, seeker squads, veterans, and I've also got 3 Vindicators in the army and a Deradreo Dreadnought. This is part 1 of the video, and we're going to cover some parts of this army, and as you can see from this picture, she's a bit of a larger force than my 1,000 Sons, so this might be a 3-parter. I'm hoping maybe 2, but maybe 3 parts. Okay. Let's have a look at what we've got. So as always I like to start with my HQ. And my HQ is large and varied because I enjoy making character models. I think characters are one of the best parts of the 30k game and the setting in general. The customization means that you can have multiples. If you're not afraid of magnetising models, it can be really, really rewarding. Now, leading this force is a man named Ahek Bor, who is a native from Saturn, and took part in some of the earliest conflicts that the Legion fought. He's a smaller man, and his model is made from parts of the Mark IV Chaplain that came with Betrayal at Calth, some Forge World Iron Hand parts, and a sword from the Forge World Mark IV upgrade kit, and his legs are actually from a Mark VIII Deathwatch kit, with some studs added to make it look more like some sort of artificer armour. And I, as a purist, I shouldn't like Mark VIII, but I liked it because I wanted something that looked different to what you would normally get. So this is handcrafted, made by an artisan somewhere. He is surrounded by a command squad of 4 men with boarding shields and power axes. This is before the chieftain squad came along, and there is actually a standard bearer, but he's not quite finished in this squad yet. These guys are made from Chaos Space Marines, and the shields are from the Mark VII boarding action team, which I don't believe is in production anymore. These guys were also some of my first foray into 3D printing, 3D printed shoulder pads, heads and axes in some places. I believe their backpacks are also printed. Next to them is several Centurions, a jump pack armed Centurion with a pair of lightning claws made from one of the Chaos Space Marine models. And I used the Chaos Space Marine kits throughout this army because I wanted to emphasise that more brutal kind of Ravager style that was inspired by the original Horus Heresy Visions books. Next up is one of the a Delegatus made from one of the models which came from the Masters of the Chapter kit. This was a 4-part resin kit that had a different character representing each of the senior command of a Space Marine chapter. I chopped him up a little bit, removed a couple of Imperial symbols, and I gave him a Mark III helmet from Sergeant Cronus and turned him into a Delegatus. A man who could turn up and be the voice of the War Master if needed. Next up we have a boarding shield armed officer. I love shields, I think shields are cool. And this guy's just in Mark III armour and he's armed with a power fist. Originally I wanted sort of a more breachery kind of HQ for the intent of, boarding actions. Someone who could be seen leading a boarding force. Next to him is the company champion, whose weapons are taken from the old Fantasy Chaos Warriors kits. He has a Mark II helmet, and he's on one of those Chaos bodies. I wanted something that looked brutal. This isn't a guy who's carrying a weapon that's top of the line. This isn't some artificer crafted, well-balanced blade from the Forges of Baal. No, these are killing weapons. These are hunks of metal that have been sharpened and they're used to kill. Next to him are 3 veterans who are used to fill in gaps wherever I need them. Maybe I want a different loadout for a squad leader. Maybe I need to add a couple of guys to the veteran squad to fill out the size. And that's what these guys will fit into, armed with power claws, plasma pistols, power weapons, thunder hammers. And again, top knots, Chaos Space Marine parts, and lots of pouches and grenades. That's a common theme throughout this army. Next up is a conversion I was very happy with at the time. Another Raptor backpack jump pack character. This one is a chaplain, and I wanted to kind of ape the eviler look of the modern 40k chaplain. He's got the skull mask, but this one has horns. And the helmet was actually made by taking a goat skull from the skulls kit, trimming down a helmet, and blending them together, which took a lot more time than I thought it would. The rest of the parts are cobbled together from all over the place, but his weapon comes from the Mark IV Chaplain from Betrayal at Calth. And last in this section is a model I'm very happy with. A sorcerer, or librarian, and I wanted to kind of get that feel that he is transitioning from being a librarian and it no longer really an Imperial Space Marine, and is taking those first few steps into becoming what we would know as a Chaos Sorcerer. So he's very kind of witch doctor-y, sort of evil wizard look to him, with some fur and some spikes and some teeth. And he's got the red gloves. And red gloves are a theme that show up in this force a lot because they are shown in a lot of the older artwork for the Sons of Horus. I use parts from the Chaos Sorcerer model, a Mark VI Marine, and a Mark IV helmet from the old Forge World Mark IV Command Squad set. All in all, these guys, they can slot in all over the Legion. They're not the only HQ models I have, there's a couple more to show off, but I'll be showing them off with the squads that they generally run with. Next up is a conversion that many of you have seen. I've been told by a lot of people that they've randomly found it on Google, or they've seen it on Reddit, or it's come up somewhere where they didn't realise it was mine until much later. This is my Spider Dreadnought. It's a resin Derridere Dreadnought torso merged with the legs of an Onager Dunecrawler. I never quite liked the Onager Dunecrawler as it was, but the moment I saw its legs, my mind whirred. Because as a kid, I loved the game Armored Core, which is a mech game where you can customize your mech to be however you want, and one of the options you can choose is quadruped. So you have walking 4 quad legs for a mech, and you can also have 2 gun arms. And I just thought, that's perfect. I can see this thing scuttling around the battlefield, leaping between cover, you know, dipping and diving into buildings, and being a real menace as an anti-aircraft platform, just hunting vehicles as they're coming into the land to drop off troops, and he scuttles out from his hidey hole and just rains plasma up from the ground. The conversion was relatively simple. I constructed the top part of the model as you would normally. I then pinned it to the lower part of a different model. The hardest part was getting the base to line up and actually still be I think it's a 90mm base for a Terminators Dreadnought. I'm not going to be able to say that word properly. This was my first of these models. I think I have 2 of them now. I have this one and I have one for my Night Lords. Originally, this model was a present from my parents or my sister for Christmas one year, and was going to go into my White Scars army, but it was requisitioned by the War Master. So that's, that's that. I will probably add another one to the army at some point, but it will be a more traditional, bipedal version. Speaking of dreadnoughts, I have a trio of Contemptor Dreadnoughts, and as I said, this was my first foray into 3D printing with this army, and I have several 3D printed parts here, including an entire torso that was given to me by a friend who I used to work with. These guys represent 3 Marines who joined the Legion together, fraternal brothers who got through selection and all of the trials needed to become a Space Marine. They fought together side by side, and they died together side by side to be interred into Contemptor Dreadnought chassis. And after that, they have been inseparable. Now these guys, I really wanted a cobbled together look. I wanted something like these are still people. This is my 3 Stooges, my, Larry, Curly and Moe. And each one, I like to think gives off a little bit of a different character. One's slightly smaller, one's really tall, the other one's a bit more sort of lanky and zany. And I have built them up from spares. One's got the legs from a Death Guard Dreadnought, another's got the legs off of the Derridrio, and the last one's using legs from the Blood and Skulls Industries upgrade set, which I believe you can still get, you just have to look around for. Many parts from different kits were thrown in here, and the posing, they are supposed to be kind of a bit more dynamic. They're not just stationary, and unfortunately sometimes it's a little hard to get them to pull off, and either the angle isn't right, or you see it perfectly, but someone looking at it from outside can't see the same sort of idea of motion that you can. But I'm happy with them as they are. They're all resin. None of these are the plastic kits. Will I add plastic dreadnoughts to this army in the future? Maybe. But I think 3 dreadnoughts is more than enough. Or 3 Contemptor, that is. Is more than enough for this force. Or for any force, really. I was joking, there's another dreadnought. So lastly, I have some Terminators, some tactical dreadnought armour, and a slightly smaller dreadnought, and we'll start with him. A Mark IV venerable Castaferum dreadnought, my first ever Forge World model, which was bought for me by my grandmother back in sort of 2008-ish. It has been stripped and repainted multiple times, serving not only in this Heresy army, but also in my Emperor's Children pre-Heresy army back in sort of 5th edition. it was in my Relictors army, and even a Sons of Medusa force. I have a unit of Cataphracti Terminators who join a Warmonger for deep strike shenanigans. And these guys came along before, or these were worked on before 2nd edition came out, so I gave them some chain bayonets from some of the resin kits because I thought they looked really brutal. Little did I know that chain bayonets were going to become such a thing in the future, but I'm very happy with the way they turned out. For me, Terminators always need something around the waist, a little bit more bulk, some extra equipment, grenades, pouches, that sort of thing, and I always try to pump them up with a bit things like chain as well. These guys also have some spacers in their torsos to make them a little taller, and it does make them a little bit more imposing. The Warmonger himself is made from the Betrayal at Calth Praetor kit, and has a axe from the Chaos Space Marine kit. And I had to sculpt Thumb onto it as well, because his hand is technically the wrong way around. Behind them are the Tartarus pattern Terminators with some lovely trophy racks from the 40k Chaos Terminators, the old ones, not the new ones, or the current ones. These were originally going to join my 8th edition Death Guard army, and I drilled into them, did a lot of damage, gave them some sort of more Death Guard-y helmets which came from the Chaos Warriors sets, and generally just made them look a bit dirty and awful. I then fell out of love with the Death Guard and decided to rescue them for the War Master. So a bit of repair work here and there, stripping the horrible green paint off them, and generally just denerglifying them, which I think I've done quite well. Now they just look like they've weathered a heavy amount of fire before they've managed to jump out of their Land Raider into combat. I do like the Tartarus pattern Terminator army, and both of these squads may get expanded up to full 10-man squads eventually. The Terminators and all of the other units in this force are painted using 3 paints. I start with a base coat of Cabalite Green. I then do a Zenithal highlight of Sybarite Green from above at about 45 degrees, so I leave the darkest recesses still showing the Cabalite Green. I then increase that angle and spray the edges with Gorse Blaster. Now when this is still wet, or before it's been washed, this is a very kind of pale white grey. It doesn't quite look right. You think that they look far too light. I then use Gorse Blaster to pick out some scratches across all of the miniatures, and I then pick out the deeper scratches using Word Bearer's Red. Now I use Word Bearer's Red because it contrasts nicely against the green, and it's not just Rhinox hide like I would normally use. I also use this because I want to show them as having almost a red oxide primer, much like German tanks in the Second World War were painted oxide red to protect the metal from rust. And that was something sort of a similar style I wanted to go for here. I also use Word Bearer's Red for the bases, mixed with a little bit of Acadian flesh tone with a dry brush on top, just to pick out, you know, the highest areas. These guys are depicted on Mars. That's where they're supposed to be, conducting a raid during the blockade of Mars to steal parts, technology, extract people. They've slipped in and out of the Martian blockade with their targets, and they've disappeared back into the night. As you can see from some of the bases, they have not gone quietly because they picked off several members of the Imperial Fists who've tried to stop them, and it's never ends well for the Imperial Fists, unfortunately. So let me know what you think about this, guys. I'll be covering some more units, maybe some of the tanks in the next video, and I really hope you enjoy this. If you have any questions, pop them down below, and if you would like to see anything up close, there'll be a link in the description or a pinned comment of the thread over on the Bolter and Chainsword, which has all the better photos of these guys. thanks for watching, guys. I always appreciate anyone who comes along and watches these things. If you want to come join us in Discord, where we share our models, and we help each other with our painting, and generally bully each other into being better people, there'll be a link for that as well, and you're always welcome to come along. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. If you want to support the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, and you know, share the videos out if you don't mind. I've had a couple of videos shared over to Reddit and they've done really well because of it. So if you guys have communities who you think might be interested in these videos, please let them know. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. Bye bye.